I had the privilege of teaching at St. Mary's School for 30 years. Even though I was teaching middle school religion, my faith was being tested every day. How could I be a faith-filled role model for my students when I was questioning God? Why me? I was trying to minister to them, but in the end, I believe I got so much more from them and their families. It was no secret what I was going through. My husband had early onset Parkinson's disease, and the love of my St. Mary's School and parish families got me through the really tough times. I want to share a story with you. 47 years ago, when I started teaching at St. Mary's, I taught third grade for a few years, and I had a little boy, Jeremy, in my class. We had been preparing for the Sacrament of Reconciliation. He wasn't Catholic and never had any religious training. We were talking about Jesus and the disciples, and he interrupted me and asked if I was one of Jesus' disciples. And I asked what he meant, and he said, since I knew so much about Jesus, I must have been there. And I responded, no, I wasn't one of the disciples. I wasn't that old. As I sat down to write this reflection on discipleship, Jeremy's question popped into my head. I realized I had answered incorrectly. I should have said, yes, I am a disciple. Not 2,000 years ago, but now. We are all disciples. By discipleship, I mean following Jesus rather than reacting negatively to the demands and pressures of life. I can't count the number of times I yelled at God and said, why me? So I continue to think about this discipleship thing. Christianity without discipleship is Christianity without Christ. What do I mean by this? It is not just saying you are a Christian, but it is living like one. It is not just going to Mass every week and putting money in the collection basket, leaving the parking lot and looking out for number one and ignoring the words of Jesus. The prophet Micah says, you have been told, O people, what is good and what the Lord requires of you. Only to do right and to love goodness and to walk humbly with your God. We are called to reach out to be a shining light for others, as my students and their families were for me. It is the little things we do that impact lives. Is there a cost to discipleship? Yes, of course, but you get so much out of it. Matthew, in his gospel, recounts how two of the hearers of Jesus expressed a desire to become disciples. The first approaches Jesus and says, Jesus, I will follow you wherever you go. Wouldn't we all like to be able to make such a generous offer? The Lord accepts this man's sincerity at face value. He does not question it. But Jesus wants the man to know what he's getting into. So he responds, foxes have dens, and the birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to rest his head. Jesus' response might remind us of some of the recruitment techniques of the military. They want potential recruits to not only understand and accept, but to actively desire the challenge and discipline that are a necessary part of military life. Jesus seems to be doing the same thing. You want to be my disciple? Well, then you better get ready. It's going to be tough. There will be few material benefits. You may even have to sacrifice what you have in order to persevere in faithfulness. Yet it will always be worth it because you will have Jesus at your side. The next potential disciple receives a personal invitation from Jesus. Follow me. But this man asked to be excused from the Lord's company for a time. Lord, let me go first and bury my father. We're almost given the impression that the Lord's path has crossed a funeral procession and that he calls this man from the midst of that task. We recognize that to bury the dead is a corporal work of mercy. Why then does Jesus ask this disciple to set aside his holy task? At first, Jesus' words can seem harsh, but that is because he's trying to expand our understanding. Jesus teaches us that the best time to respond to him is when he calls. It is easy to put things off, especially when one has serious and important obligations, as this man had. But the best time to answer God's call is now, not tomorrow. About 10 years ago, my now almost 17-year-old grandson asked me a question while we were driving home from school. Nana, what's the meaning of life? I had no idea how to answer him. And I told him I think about it. So that night I went home and started doing searches and got some great ideas. To my surprise, everything I looked at brought it all back to Jesus and faith. Be the best you can be. Try to live and treat others as Jesus treated them. Be kind, loving, and caring to all. On February 17, 2006, I got a message to go to the school office because I had an important phone call. It was the doctor at the facility where my husband lived. She wanted to tell me that he had just passed away. After a few minutes, I went back to my classroom where my 8th grade religion class was waiting. They asked me what had happened, and I told them. Immediately someone says, "Group hug." Then another student said, "You need to go home. You can leave us. We'll be fine by ourselves." A simple hug, a hand on the shoulder. This is also what discipleship is all about. The gospel challenges us to say yes to God right away, without delay. We should never be afraid of the cost of discipleship because Jesus will make it a light burden. You know the old saying, God doesn't give us more than we can handle, and the Blessed Mother will be nearby helping us to find happiness in doing the will of God.